Okay, welcome. This is a social studies skill, how to do source-based exams. So we're going to be taking a look at how do you really take a source-based exam. These are exams where here in grade 9 social studies, the majority of our exams are source-based exams. So it's a good idea to know how to take these exams. I'm going to take a look at two main things in this video today. First, we're going to find out what a source-based exam actually is, and then we're going to take a look at some tips on how to read and take a source-based exam. So source-based exams sounds kind of intimidating, sounds kind of scary, but really it's not. A source-based exam simply is an exam that has an image, maybe a dialogue, some cartoons, a graph, a table, something where the information is rooted within a specific source. Now, like I said, those sources could be images or dialogues, cartoons, things like that. You can see them. You can see them listed here. The information is pulled from the source, so you'll find the answer somewhere within that source. Oftentimes, students think that a source-based exam is a very easy exam because all of the answers are within the source. And although that is sometimes true, that's not always the case. It's important that you know your content, and you have to be really strong when it comes to reading comprehension as well. For example, here's an example of the answer not being within the source. So let's take a look at this real quick here. So we've got members of the Senate in Canada. They belong to a variety of political parties. They represent regions of Canada, and they can hold office until the age of 75 without even looking at the question. We know we're going to be answering for this question mark here. So let's take a look at the actual question. Which of the following phrases correctly completes the diagram in source 1? And there you go. We're looking for the question mark. Is it report to the Governor General? Are appointed by the Prime Minister? Form the official opposition in Parliament, or are members of the Prime Minister's cabinet? Well, by looking at the source, unfortunately, we can't pull any information out of here to actually answer the question fully. Now, the information that we can pull from here is all of the ideas pointing towards the Senate in Canada. So here is where content knowledge is very important. And if you know your content, you know that the question mark here is going to be B, are appointed by the Prime Minister. Now, you wouldn't know this unless you're paying attention in a Social Studies 9 class, for example. But that is a source-based exam. So you see a source in this situation, it's a picture, and you have to answer questions based off of that picture. So what are some tips and tricks when it comes to dealing with source-based exams? Well, number one, read the sources. Read all of the sources that are being presented to you. And what you want to do is you want to match the sources to what you already know about that content, okay? Then take a look at some key messages that might be there. So compare sources. Is there a common message that's being shared? Is there something similar? Or are they contrasting messages too? So that sometimes happens in sources. Read the questions to connect those key messages. So the questions are below the sources, and their answers are going to be included as well. So are there any key messages that we see when you're reading the questions? Remove options that do not contain any of those key messages. So if there's something in the options of that question that have nothing to do with the sources, then you can automatically eliminate them. And I always tell my students, switch it up a little bit. Read the questions first to determine what the messages will be when you read the sources. So we'll do another example here. This is the voter turnout in Canadian federal elections from 1988 all the way to 2008. And then we've got along the y-axis, we have the percentage of eligible voters who cast their ballots. Then on the bottom axis, we've got the election dates. So we can see that there. And then we've got some information that is starting here in 1988, 1993, 97, the year 2000, 2004, 2006, and then 2008. This is the percentage of the voter turnout for each of these years that are listed down here along the election dates. So without even reading the question, let's take a look at the source. And what is this source telling us? Well, yes, it's telling us that the voter turnout in Canada from 1988 to 2008. But what do we notice about this line that's present here? Well, in 1988, it starts at 75.3, and then it makes its way down to 2008, where the voter turnout is 58.8%. What are some words that you could use to describe this line? Which direction is it going? It is declining. Now, yes, in 2006, there is a little bit of an uptake there, but for the most part, this line is on a decline. Let's remember that. Let's go to the question. The graph in source 2 illustrates that from 1988 to 2008, voter turnout in Canada remained high, stayed constant, fluctuated frequently, or declined significantly. This is where knowledge of content comes in. At first glance, one would say that 75.3% is high voter turnout. If you remember from class, though, if you are taking a Social 9 class, you know that 75.3% is a healthy voters turnout, but it's not a high voters turnout. And it didn't remain high because 75.3 is much higher than 58.8. So we can remove remained high. Stayed constant is the next option. Well, if it stayed constant, we would be floating around the 75 percentage mark in all of these elections. So it didn't do that. Fluctuated frequently. The only fluctuation we have here is between 2004 and 2008, where in 2006, the voter turnout does increase. But we don't see these frequent fluctuations occur, so it can't be C. But it did, however, decline significantly. It was declining, and that's the word that we used, and significantly. It declined from 75.3% to 58.8%. It declined 16.5% over the course of those years. So the answer here would be declined significantly. So let's give this a shot. So we're going to try this now. I've got a couple of sources here that we're going to take a look at. This is from the Alberta Grade 9 curriculum. So we've got three sources here, one which we already saw in this practice. We have source 2, and then we have source 3, and then we have 4 questions that go along with it. So let's take a look. Source number 1, members of the Senate in Canada belong to a variety of political parties, represent regions of Canada, and can hold office until age 75. So we need to look and see what this question mark will be. Source number 2 is a cartoon. We've got the Senate, and all the senators are represented here on the right-hand side. And we have elected people here on the left-hand side, and we know they're elected because we have a placard here that says elected. And one senator says, "Is it contagious?" So right now we're starting to see some common themes here, and that is the Senate and the Senate. So one would assume that source 3 is dealing with the Senate as well. So let's take a look. So this one is a dialogue, and it says, source 3, I believe that the Canadian Senate is important because its members make sure that all regions of Canada have an equal voice. Senators carefully consider and debate laws proposed for Canada. In order for a bill that has been passed by the House of Commons to become law, it must be supported by the majority vote in the Senate. The manner in which senators have traditionally been selected ensures that laws that are made benefit everyone in Canada. Common theme here, the Senate. This source number 2 is an outlier. It's a different message than what we see in source 1 and source 3. So let's take a look at the questions. Question number 1, which of the following phrases correctly completes the diagram in source 1? Head back to source 1, and that's this image right here. We're figuring out what the question mark is going to be. So, do members of the Senate in Canada report to the Governor General? That's coming from our content of Grade 9 Social, and you would know the answer to that is no. are appointed by the Prime Minister. From our content, we know that that is true. But is this the best answer? C, form the official opposition in Parliament. We know that to be false. And D, are members of the Prime Minister's cabinet. We know that is to be false. So the answer here, the correct answer for number 1, is going to be B. So all senators are appointed by the Prime Minister. So what I'm going to do here, let's just quickly highlight these answers so that you can kind of see as we go along. Okay. All right. Well, I don't like that color. Let's switch this up. It's too dark of a blue. Number 2, taken together, source 2 and 3 suggest that the current Senate selection process in Canada is, so taking a look at 2 and 3. Is it contagious, is what the picture says here of this elected representative. And source number 3 talks about the important impact that its members have. So taken together, source 2 and 3 suggest that the current Senate selection process in Canada is A, expected to increase stability in government. It's not talking anything here about stability, so probably not A. B, intended to enhance the effectiveness of Parliament. Possibly. Here we do have source 3 talking about the House of Commons, but not necessarily with this cartoon. So B, let's put it to the side. C, viewed both positively and negatively by Canadian citizens. Well, this is a negative view of the Senate, and this here is a positive view of the Senate. So C is a definite possibility. Or is it D, considered to be beneficial to both politicians and the electorate? Well, it doesn't say anything here about being beneficial to politicians or the electorate. So we can get rid of D, which makes C our strongest answer. So we'll highlight this one here if you're following along. Number 3, the ideas presented by the speaker in source 3 highlight what? Well, you could read the source again. We already read it once, so for the benefit of time for this video, we won't read it again. So let's take a look. Is it A, role of political parties in Canada? Nothing in source 3 mentions political parties, so it cannot be A. Collective rights of Canadian citizens, B. It says nothing about the collective rights of Canadian citizens, so it cannot be B. C, significance of Canada's head of state. Our head of state is our Governor General, who represents the British monarch. We know that from grade 9 social studies content, so it cannot be C. So chances are it's D. The principles underlying political institutions in Canada is going to be the best answer that fits for number 3. And then finally, number 4, the central issue to which all 3 sources relate is the extent to which. So this particular question, number 4, is asking us to look at all 3 sources. So all 3 sources. Does it A, representatives within Canada's government are accountable to citizens? Perhaps. We are talking about how important its members are to Canadian law, so that could definitely work. B, the powers of the judicial branch of government should be reduced. Nothing in these sources mentions the judicial branch. C, a majority government is beneficial to Canadian citizens. It is not talking about anything related to majority governments in the House of Commons, so it's definitely not going to be C. Or is it D, election results should be comparable to popular vote? Again, nothing in these sources is talking about election results or popular vote, but they all are talking about the representatives within Canada's government are accountable to their citizens. And we see this because we've got elected people here. Who elects people? It would be the electorate or the constituencies in Canada. This talks about the importance of its members in Canada. And then we have the appointing of the senators here by the Prime Minister. So representatives within Canada's government are accountable to the citizens. That's how you take source-based exams. Sometimes you can pull information right from the source and it'll tell you what the answer is, but oftentimes you need to use the sources in conjunction with the knowledge of your content to be able to complete a source-based task. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back at another time with some more social studies skills.